Welcome to Literary Devices. Alliteration, hyperbole, onomatopoeia, imagery, similes and metaphors, assonance, oxymorons, symbolism, and irony are just a few that we are going to look at today. So let's have fun with literary devices. Buzzing, bug-eyed bee glowing with hope of gold would rather be pestering sweaty cows than looking for a pot of gold. Pestering sweaty cows is like licking icing off a cake, bee claims. Bee is a lion, a gnat, and happy not to be a cat or a weak and weary wise. You will need a sheet of paper and a writing tool so that you can collect a list of literary devices that you will be able to use for your bonus point activity. Do you remember what an onomatopoeia is? Bzzz. I'm giving you hints here. How about an oxymoron? Wiseful, wiseful. Remember, onomatopoeia is a word that symbolizes a sound. For example, cuckoo, cuckoo, or sizzle, or bzzz. Now, take a few minutes and collect a list of onomatopoeia. Do you remember, think back, when you were, 4, 5, 6 years old, and you thought those knock-knock jokes were so much fun? For example, let's take a look at one. Knock, knock. Who's there? Boo. Boo-hoo. Don't cry. I was only joking. You thought now you think those are so silly. At the time you thought they were pretty cool. Well, that is a really good example of onomatopoeia and how much fun you can have with that literary device. All right, let's go on to oxymorons. Do you remember what an oxymoron is? It's actually a contradictory in words, putting two opposite words together. For example, she is just a poor little rich girl. How can you be poor and rich at the same time? And let's come up with some more examples. Cruel kindness. Kind of hard to be cruel and kind at the same time. To make haste slowly. The wisest fool. All right, take a few minutes and collect oxymorons. Now we're going to take a look at two more literary devices, alliteration and assonance. Remember, alliteration is a repetition of consonants at the beginning of the word, at the beginning of words. For example, weak and weary, rare radiant, deep darkness. Now let's take a look at assonance. Assonance is where the vowel sounds are repeated, and that is to create a mood or to add a meaning to the word. So, for example, glows with hope and gold. What mood does that put you in? Take a few minutes and think about that and write it down. Glows and hope of gold. What mood? If you said something like optimistic, promising, hopeful, that would be a correct answer. How about the next one? Melancholy menace. What kind of mood does that put you in? If you came up with something like gloomy and danger, that would be correct. Now, take a few minutes, collect alliteration and assonance. Next, we're going to move on to similes and metaphors. These you are probably pretty familiar with. You've been doing similes and metaphors for, quite some time now. So do you remember the definition of simile? Remember, simile is when you are comparing two unlike things using like or as. For example, the man is as brave as a lion. That's pretty classic. Okay. Also, remember, a metaphor is an indirect comparison when you are comparing two unlike things that actually have something in common. Classic example, love is a rose. And let's examine this a little bit further. Look at the man is as brave as a lion. What two things are being compared? Man, lion. Now let's go into the metaphor. Love is a rose. What is the implied comparison? You are comparing love and rose. What does love and rose have in common? Think about it. Jot it down in your notebook. What does love and rose have in common? Maybe you came up with something like this. They both can be delicate and they both can hurt. Remember, roses have thorns. Now, what I would like you to do is create a simile or a metaphor using that picture where the girl has painted herself into a corner. Why are literary devices so important? A couple of things. It helps the author explain abstract ideas and emotions. For example, freedom and love. It also helps the audience. Sometimes the audience needs a visual to be able to identify with what the author's trying to say. Maybe to help identify with a feeling or an idea, or engage the reader with an unusual situation. Next, I want you to look at each picture and read each literary device. Now I want you to match them together. These are the last 4 literary devices that we are going to cover today. So see if you can match these, see what you come up with. Take a few minutes and do this in your notebook. If you came up with something like this, you would be correct. The heart is a symbol. Hyperbole, an exaggeration. Alliteration, repetition. Opposition, irony. So let's take a quick review. Symbolism represents an idea like heart, love, a dove, peace. Hyperbole is an exaggeration. I told you a million times, I have a ton of homework. Alliteration, repetition of the same sounds. And I love this one. Edgar Allan Poe was very good at using alliteration. Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered, weak and weary. Irony. I love irony. It's actually the opposite of what you really mean, opposite of the literal meaning. I love this last one. Most tobacco company executives do not smoke. How ironic is that? Okay, so let's have another review using the story that you had at the beginning. We are going to pull out the literary devices, and I want you to identify what device is being used. Buzzing, bug-eyed bee. What device is that? If you guessed alliteration, you would be correct. Flowing with hope of gold. What literary device is being used there? Assonance, right. Pot of gold, what literary device? If you said assonance, you would be correct. Next one, pestering sweaty cows is like licking icing off a cake. Example of imagery. Next one, B is a lion and a gnat. If you said metaphor, you're correct. Weak and weary, wise fool. An example of alliteration. Now, using literary devices, create your own silly story. I would like you to be able to earn these bonus points, so webmail me a silly story using at least 3 literary devices. You can use the devices that you've collected on your list. At the end of your story, include a list of literary device phrases from your story and the literary device. The completion of this assignment can earn you up to 35 points. So this is what your assignment's going to look like. Your story, the literary devices that you used, at least 3, and then the name of that literary device. Have fun using literary devices.